Thanks for staying with us. Now, in the wake of the global pandemic, many were uncertain of Africa's capacity to respond effectively to the pressure associated with a global crisis. Maybe they forgot that the Ebola pandemic in West Africa in 2014 provided the Africa Centers for Disease Control and Prevention with decisive decisions for Africa's emergency response and surveillance crisis. So, the Untold Story of Africa is a 4-part documentary that serves as a testament to the journey that the African Centers for Disease Control and Prevention took in the fight against COVID-19 with partners like the MasterCard Foundation and all of them. It provides us with an opportunity to reflect on the achievements made and the steps taken to address upcoming health crisis. Merely thinking about upcoming health crisis should light up your eyes like, not again. But let's...
So the Ebola was a dress rehearsal.
Sort of.
Well, we didn't know that something worse was coming.
And now some are saying, look, we may not wait for another 100 years before we have another global health crisis such as a pandemic.
Yeah.
But Ahmed Ogwell Umar joins us this morning from Addis Ababa. He is Acting Director, Africa Centers for Disease Control. Thanks for joining us this morning.
Thank you for having me.
Well, perhaps a good place to start would be, how is it working together with, African Centers for Disease Control working together?
No, thank you. Thank you. And it's really a very good thing that our African journalists are now being part of this very important step of ensuring that we all learn and know about our African institutions. For us here at Africa CDC, it is 24/7 work, whether it's a pandemic that is known or a small outbreak that people don't talk about a lot. We have a team of experts here at the headquarters in Addis Ababa and throughout our 5 regional offices, including some country offices spread across Africa. We work not alone. We work with partners. These are technical partners who give us expertise. We have philanthropic organizations who support our work. Of course, at the top of that is our member states, the African countries that we work very, very closely with, including the UN agencies across this continent. So for us, it's 24/7. Wherever we are required, wherever there is a disease threat, wherever there is a health emergency, we will be there.
Well, we've fought so many battles over the years and over the decades, but so why then was it imperative to highlight our fight against COVID-19 and our achievements therein to various audiences?
It's really an issue of telling your story in your own words. Africa CDC is a child of crisis, born out of the Ebola crisis in West Africa 2014-2016. That story we didn't tell fully. The Ebola outbreaks and other outbreaks on the continent between 2017 and 2020, again, we didn't tell that story ourselves effectively. COVID was special, it continues to be special. What we did as Africa, and this is all of Africa, is special as well. Therefore, we decided to take out time and share with the public and all our partners what really was going on behind the scenes and some of the key outcomes of the activities we've been conducting throughout this pandemic. We want to tell this story in our own words, and we want to share with the public what Africa CDC is beyond just being seen as another Africa Union agency and beyond just being another public health agency here on the continent. We are telling our story, and we are telling it in our own words.
And what was the role of Africa CDC and its partners in mitigating the effect of the pandemic?
Thank you, Leru. We had three different types of roles, looking at everyone who participated in this. The beginning is Africa CDC itself. We, working with our member states here on the continent, generated the necessary evidence that was required in planning, designing the strategies and actions that we took. So the critical technical thinking behind all the strategy, this was our role as Africa CDC. Our second role was to coordinate all the activities that were going to happen on the continent and ensuring that they were happening according to plan. The second level of partners are our member states. From the top, our heads of state, whether presidents or prime ministers, were deeply involved in the discussions and decision-making that we needed as Africa CDC to be able to put our technical strategies into action. So at the political level, our heads of state, our ministers, provided us with unprecedented support. And in this way, our member states have been a very key partner. Third are what I will call all the other technical partners, all the other financial partners who came in to support the strategies that had been approved. And they played their roles very, very well because Africa CDC was coordinating all these different activities and all these different contributions that were coming in from the different partners. We are very grateful to all our partners, our member states, the intergovernmental organizations working here on the continent, and the philanthropic and non-state actors that provided us and continue to provide us with a lot of support in what we as Africa CDC are planning and doing.
How was this done, and how easy or how difficult was it, seeing as Africa is not a small continent?
Not a small continent, and a very, very diverse continent as well. Even within one country, very diverse. So this was done in using every opportunity to build bridges with everyone and every institution that we thought would be useful in providing the kind of support that Africa required. We cooperated with everyone we needed to cooperate with. We communicated with everyone we needed to communicate with. We collaborated across sectors beyond health, and we ensured that as we did all this, we were providing our partners with the right information. We were providing our partners with the right results. So how did we do this? Apart from engaging our partners, is we then recruited Africans. There's a lot of expertise on this continent. We recruited Africans who came and are now part of Africa CDC. We deployed them in where they are required across the continent in many, many countries. We are present at the peak of our work. We were present in over 27 countries physically, and the rest we were supporting remotely. And apart from deploying them, we then provided our experts with the tools, the materials that they needed, and the advocacy support that was required for this work. Finally, is we reported back to the heads of states. We let them know what we were doing, the challenges we were facing, and what we thought were the next steps that would be able to change if there was a barrier, or could be able to improve where we were succeeding. The heads of states gave us their ears, they gave us their wisdom, they made critical decisions, and that is why we were able to succeed the way that we have succeeded and what we are sharing in the series of stories that Channels TV has graciously accepted to air.
Just for your information, if you are yet to catch that, the untold story of Africa's response to COVID-19 is a 4-part documentary that's been running on Channels Television all week. You may still be able to catch it. But you know, one of the things that would naturally come to mind, of course, that's part of it for you to see. One of the things that comes to mind, Mr. Umar, is one other question that I would want to, it's cheering to know that you have engaged several partners and all of that, but what are some of the success stories that can be highlighted from what you know about how Africa took this on? Maybe there are certain specific countries or certain specific stories or interventions that you want to highlight.
Now, thanks, Ayon. Let me highlight two, one at the policy level and then one at the country level. At the policy level, at the height of the pandemic in the year 2020, our heads of state met in excess of 14 times, virtually, but the topic was COVID-19 and how we can be able to handle it. Those meetings resulted in action that opened the door for us to be able to get onto this continent adequate test kits, for us to be able to test those who needed testing for COVID-19. You will recall that in the beginning of the pandemic, we couldn't get tests onto the continent. And therefore, we were running blind. We didn't know what the level of burden we had on the continent. We didn't know where it was spreading and how fast. And so those very strategic meetings ensured that we engaged with countries that were manufacturing the test kits, and we got millions of test kits onto the continent. To date, we have done over 190 million COVID-19 tests, and this is a testimony to the leadership that was provided by the Africa Union as well as the Africa CDC. Second is at country level. You will recall that when the issue of variants started to appear, Africa was considered as not one of those places that pathogen genomics and sequencing of this virus was going to be done effectively. We have outperformed literally all regions of the world in as far as sequencing is concerned. We picked at least 3 variants and sublineages that were not being picked elsewhere, guiding response, guiding planning by ensuring that we knew what type of virus that we were dealing with. And our countries on the continent have been fantastic in providing samples, in building their capacity for this new tool that we are using for sequencing viruses, and also in providing that information so that we are able to act quickly before any new variant continues to spread. So these two things, I would say, is what is in the background, usually not reported very actively, but huge, huge success for us here on the continent.
Let me sneak this in. Just about the time the pandemic started and the lockdowns began in Africa, we had a conversation with Nigeria's head of the Food and Drug Administration and Control. And so we asked her one question. What is the low-hanging fruit with which people can tackle this COVID-19? And I will never forget her response. She said, one of our main, if not our main low-hanging fruit in Africa was herbal medicine. Fruits, vegetables, and all those things. Now, in terms of lessons and experiences, what should authorities and institutions do, government and all, in terms of preparing the people for such similar emergencies that may occur in the near or far future? We understand we don't have to wait another 100 years for one.
We will not wait another 100 years. The rate at which we are engaging with our environment and having interaction with areas that we were not supposed to have interactions with means that we are removing pathogens that were hidden into our population. Now, going forward, there are 3 things that our governments and ourselves need to do. The first is information. We must build the culture of getting information from the right sources. This means that governments and other agencies that are involved in public health must make information available quickly and easily, and us, as members of the public, we consume that good information, limiting the space for rumors and miscommunication. So this is one thing, providing information. Second is strengthening our indigenous foods, knowledge, and health-seeking behaviors. if we can be able to strengthen our immunity using natural methods, we are more likely to resist an infection rather than if we wait for the infection to come and then we try and treat it. Using indigenous knowledge, using indigenous foods is an extremely important part because this is what is available to us easily across the continent. Third is building our capacity with appropriate expertise. That way, if something is starting within Africa, we have experts who can be able to characterize it and then can be able to advise on the best way of containing whichever outbreak that may be. So these three things for me are very important: information, using indigenous knowledge and material, and then building expertise on the continent to ensure that we can be able to respond quickly whenever we are required to do so.
You talked about foods and all of that, and it only brought to mind something that I've heard. I mean, I've literally taken medicine 101, on this program because of some of the issues that we have to deal with and discuss. I've heard about phytomedicine and that we have quite an edge in that area over the whole world. Is there any thinking along that line for Africa CDC?
Two things that we are doing in as far as exploiting positively indigenous knowledge and our local fauna and flora that contain a lot of possibilities for our medicine. One is we are supporting all the institutions, the African institutions on the continent that have a traditional and indigenous medicines program, so that they can be able to study closely what we have locally and then use that positively for our health. So we are really supporting all that research. Second is we have committed, and this is one of the priorities of the Africa Union, we have committed that any product that is going to be discovered here on the continent, any product that will be the result of indigenous knowledge and has been shown to work, we are going to ensure that that product is accessible across the continent to all those that may need it, because this would be a very positive thing for Africa to do for itself. So these two things we are doing to try and get indigenous knowledge and indigenous flora and fauna to be part of our preparedness and response whenever we need to.
So with what you know now, what would you advise the public regarding resilience and overcoming the effects of the pandemic?
What I would advise the public, one, is that the pandemic is still there. The virus is still circulating, and we need to have that at the back of our minds, at the front of our minds, whenever we are out engaging in our usual economic and social activities. The pandemic is still there. Second is my advice to the public is get yourself vaccinated against this particular virus. We want everybody to be fully vaccinated, and those above 50 to have boosters as appropriate within a country setup, a country policy setup. And we want as many as 70% of the continent to be vaccinated against COVID. Meanwhile, we need the public to be aware whenever any new outbreak comes, or an old outbreak that is spreading. Monkeypox is a good example, Lassa fever, yellow fever. These outbreaks keep on coming back, and we need the public to have information on how to protect themselves, because protecting yourself from one virus to another, one bacteria to another, is a bit different depending on their modes of transmission. So that knowledge, members of the public need to get it from the right sources and not through rumors. Finally, as members of the public, as we prepare for the future, we need to ensure that we are not engaging with the environment in a way that is detrimental to us. For example, going into forests, going into caves, eating foods that are not traditionally what human beings are supposed to eat, exposing ourselves to situations that may be able to give us, to make us infected by any of these pathogens that are within the animal kingdom or within our forest. we need to address our behavior in a way that is going to be protective of ourselves, because when we protect ourselves, we protect the family, we protect the rest of the society. But key amongst all of these is information. And I would urge members of the public, get vaccinated fully, and then get your information from the right place. And your ministries of health is as good a place as any to start. And Africa CDC, we provide that on a very regular basis.
It sounds to me like you're outlawing bushmeats, but you may not want to speak to that one, But how significant, you stated this the other time, we have about 30 seconds to go, but how significant is nutrition in all of this? You stated it earlier, and I'd like you to emphasize it if it is that important.
Extremely important. Nutrition is the source of immunity for the human being, and when we are we are exposed to good nutrition, then our immunity is going to be better. When we are not exposed to good nutrition, our immunity is going to be poor. When our immunity is poor, we cannot withstand the smallest of infections, and therefore anything that our body comes across will cause us illness. Immunity is at the center of the body's protection, and nutrition is the basis for that immunity. So we must get good nutrition, and the fresher it is, the better. The more organic it is, the better. The more local it is, the better.
Sounds like farm to table all over again. We have to thank you very much for being part of our conversation this morning. Ahmed Ogwell Umar is Acting Director, Africa Centers for Disease Control. Thank you again for your time.
Thank you, Ayo and Aleru. Good to be here.
So we take another break now, and when we return, it's about that Junior Achievement Nigeria's venture in management program. Do stay with us.